In this video, we are looking at my Redcat RDS, and as we've already modified this car some to have more weight in the rear, there's one more thing. 18-Wheeler Innovations, you can find them on Facebook, have actually come out with multiple different battery mounting solutions for the Redcat RDS, and so we're going to be looking at the different options that they have. They have like an actual rear battery mount. They have one that moves the battery closer to the rear, kind of like where my ESC is currently mounted. They have one that replaces the factory one, and then they even have one that's a high center of gravity mount if you want that kind of thing. So I'm going to look at all three of those options and see which one makes the most sense for me. My goal here is to be looking at, is there any way that I can move my battery back in order to increase the total rear weight bias? As we get this started, I'm going to take a baseline weight of the car with the battery in it before we get anything started. With the battery in it, and this is a low center of gravity, this is a 4000 kV Genzace Redline right now, and again, I do have a couple things that I've done to the car to reduce weight or move weight around already. Total weight is 1043. Nothing that we're doing here today I expect I'll change that much. I have a 66% rear weight bias at 685 total rear weight. This first mount is what they call their Flex Tune mount. It's actually multiple parts here. You can actually take these apart and separate them out. That's part of the cool thing. It goes right in the place of the stock battery holder, so you don't necessarily gain a whole lot from that standpoint, but you can actually either leave this centerpiece in or out, and that helps tie the chassis together if you put it in, and that in theory is going to help limit some of the flex and change how the car drives. It has different little tabs here for if you're going to be using like a high battery, a tall battery, or a shorty battery, kind of like I am, the low LCG battery. So those can go in there. I'm going to keep these parts for right now just in case there's something different I want to do. But that is not what I am after initially here today, is I want to look at moving all this rearward. And so we're going to move on to the next part. So this one right here, all one piece coming in. Again, you can use these little tabs here to help make sure you hold your battery in. So that is nice. Just got to put a couple screws in. So this actually mounts way back here. So it replaces, if normally this transmission's turned around, there's a little waterfall right here. I've actually replaced the waterfall myself with a very, very thin piece here, trying to reduce some weight. This bolts in right in that same place. It has these bottom supports so that it can actually hold the battery in. If I grab mine, you will see how the battery will fit in there beautifully. It looks like you can maybe even get a little bit taller battery than this Genzace in there if you really want to, but that will go right in here. This is the one that I was looking at because it will help me move my battery back a little bit. I need to figure out where my ESC is going to go if I do that, but it will help me move all that back, and then I can do something a little bit different here, maybe shifting that weight that we talked about rearward. I think I'm going to get started by removing my ESC and capacitor. I really am a little bit nervous that because I flopped this around that my shocks are actually going to get in the way, and I'm not going to be able to use this at all. But I'm going to give it a shot and see what it looks like. All this stuff out of the way, we can then slide this in and test fit it for the first time. It's like it's almost fits in there just perfectly. Looks like it'll clear the shocks and everything. Looking interesting here. So this is it installed now. Clearly my ESC is just dangling here right now. I would need to rewire my ESC once I confirm exactly where I want this to sit, but you can then slide in a shorty lipo, no issue whatsoever, and that's moving that weight back. It says in the kit that it's only good for a shorty, and that's also because, remember, I have my whole transmission flipped around here, so if this was rotated around, the spur gear and everything would be in the way. It would be much harder to get a full-size battery in, but as it turns out, since I have nothing in here, you can actually just slide the full-size battery in, boop, just like that, and it fits super tight. So yes, you're still using shorty lipos, which is fine, awesome, probably what you want to be using for drifting anyway. But if you've reversed the transmission like I have, you can actually use both a standard and a low center of gravity shorty lipo. Now, clearly for me, I would maybe even want to figure out how to mount the ESC like right here. You know, like if I make a little plate back here, I could actually have the ESC sit right here on top of it and just really maximize it. Now, the one thing I did note is you do lose the screws here that would mount in otherwise to connect the decks together. Again, I've screwed this up on my own because this is not turned around where that waterfall would then connect down in here. That would help provide a lot of that strength. They did provide 2 screws in here. I don't know if you can barely see them. I don't know if you can barely see them in through here. It's kind of dark, but there's 2 screw holes in here. You could actually technically put a screw in there if you wanted to help hold it down to this bottom chassis and keep everything from flexing a little bit more if you so chose. I am going to, however, though, get this battery back in it and we're going to weigh it and see how much difference did it really make moving it back, knowing that I still need to fix my ESC finally. You know, where it's going to be. I'm probably not going to affix it to the top of my battery. Probably not a good long-term solution. But, you know, something like this, I could probably make a little plate right here for it to sit right above, and that would be in great shape. So, let's weigh it and see how much difference we've made. Moment of truth. As we look at this from a total weight, we gained about 4 grams. So, we did take some plastic off. We put some plastic back. In my case, I gained about 4. If you were doing this with a stock configuration, you got to remember I had already modified my waterfall to be basically nothing. I'm guessing stock configuration to this, you're probably net neutral from a total weight standpoint. Now, when we look at bias, I was at 66%. And that was 695 grams. So what we've done is we've moved 3%, which ended up being, it's just somewhere in the ballpark of 30 grams total from the front to the rear from a bias standpoint. So that moving that back ended up with 30 grams more on these rear wheels. That's actually really good because, I mean, that is exact weight where we want it for traction. I tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to rig this ESC up a little bit and I'm going to drive it just here in my garage and see if I can tell the difference. Well, that was cool. It actually drove perfectly fine. I couldn't tell that much of a difference. And again, we were changing what, like 3% of the total weight back there. Probably not going to be that good of a driver to be able to really tell that difference. What I'm curious about now is, can I pull this battery mount out? And what can I do about what they talked about from like a high center of gravity battery mount? And again, this may be where my shocks really get in my way. But if I could do that, I could leave my ESC down on the bottom. I could mount my shocks up here. This may be a great answer for us. So let me see what happens as I mess with this. And now this is what it's going to look like if you want the high center of gravity, maybe that load transfer kind of spec for it. So what you're going to start with, it's the same as the rear mount battery tray. You're going to start with this little part with the dimple. It goes on the bottom. You put some nuts in here and then 2 screws on this side. There's a little dimple. It'll actually lock into this plate here. Works awesome. So that bolts in and that gets you here. On this side, you're actually going to be using 2 screws to go down into your waterfall. This is 2 separate pieces. You have this piece, and then you have these different spacers that you can use here. With these spacers on, he provides you with different thicknesses there. You can build that up. And then that screws straight down in here. There's some long screws down into your waterfall. Once that's there, you have your foundation set. This comes in and bolts in, bang, bang, and then you have this thing now. You are a total of like 40-ish, 40-ish or so plus millimeters above the deck. From a weight distribution standpoint, you're still the same front and rear, but you are just at this point much, much higher. Now, for me, because of this dang truck body, I swear I love this truck body, but it gives me a lot of hassles. It won't actually clear, the battery won't clear my truck body. That's why it's not actually all bolted in so I can show you me driving it. It's because it turns out the truck body gets in the way. But either way, this is awesome because it gives you a whole nother option here for how you could mount it. And this whole load transfer is all the rage right now. So really, really cool that they give you the option to be able to do this. But there is one more that is actually even more aggressive, and this actually goes back in here is my understanding, and it is actually a full rear mount battery system, and you can actually even mount the ESC plate up on top of it. Now clearly I have my whole transmission turned around to make it a rear motor, so this isn't going to work for me, but it is cool that they actually do provide you with these 3 different choices that you can get. All 3D printed parts, all good designs they look like, so pretty fun. But at the end of the day, that was awesome. Cheap upgrade. If you are curious about getting any of this rear mount, or just moving the battery back, or the flex tune, or the high center of gravity mount, that's all the rage right now. If you're curious about getting any of that, check out 18 Wheeler Innovations on Facebook, and they can get you hooked up with some parts. Thanks for watching, folks. Goodbye.